The cargo ship Wayfarer Dawn drifted through the silent sea of stars. Its captain, Marcus Hale, sat at the controls with one hand resting on the worn dashboard and the other holding a lukewarm cup of coffee. He had been flying trade routes for almost 10 years, and though the job paid well enough, it was mostly quiet, empty, and sometimes lonely. Space was beautiful, but beauty became routine when it stretched endlessly before your eyes. Marcus sighed, glancing at the blinking lights on his scanner. Another day, another run across the rim of known space. He leaned back in his chair, stretching his legs. That was when the proximity alarm began to beep. At first, Marcus thought it was just debris drifting by, scraps of old satellites or pieces of broken ships. But the signal was too steady. His brow furrowed. The ship's AI confirmed, unidentified object detected, bearing 217, low energy output. Possible escape pod, Marcus straightened. An escape pod this far from any colony? That was unusual and dangerous. Pirates sometimes used fake pods to lure in good-hearted rescuers, but something in the tone of the scanner felt different. The energy readings were weak, almost fading. Whoever was inside might not last long. He hesitated only for a moment before setting a course. Marcus had seen too many cold stories of people ignored out here in the void. He wasn't going to be the reason another life slipped away. The Wayfarer Dawn maneuvered closer. The pod drifted slowly, its hull scorched and cracked. Marcus activated the docking clamps and reeled it in. A hiss of escaping air greeted him as the hatch unlocked. Inside, the dim emergency lights revealed a figure slumped against the restraints. She was unlike anyone Marcus had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly like glass-catching moonlight. Faint glowing lines traced across her arms and face, pulsing weakly as if fading with every breath. Her hair floated around her head in strands of silver blue, and her eyes, half open, reflected the starlight like crystal pools. Marcus's first thought was Al Ain. He had heard rumors of them, an alien people who rarely left their crystalline homeworld. To most humans, they were more myth than reality, and now, one of them sat half-conscious in front of him. Quickly, Marcus checked her vitals with his portable medkit. The readings were strange, but it was clear enough. She was alive, but barely. Her oxygen was nearly gone and her body temperature was dropping. "Hang on," Marcus muttered, undoing her restraints and lifting her carefully into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile like glass but warm to the touch. He carried her into the ship's infirmary and set her gently on the medical bed. The girl stirred weakly, whispering words in a language Marcus didn't understand. He shook his head. "Sorry, I don't speak that," he said softly. He connected her to the ship's life support systems, giving her oxygen and warmth. The medbay filled with a steady hum as machines began to stabilize her condition. Hours passed. Marcus sat by her side, watching the soft rise and fall of her chest. Finally, her eyes opened fully. They were bright, glowing faintly with a pale blue light. She studied him for a long moment before speaking, her voice delicate but steady. "You are human," Marcus blinked. Her words were accented but clear. "That's right. Name's Marcus. You're safe now. What happened to you?" The girl closed her eyes briefly as if gathering strength. "I am Lysera, of the Alain. My vessel was attacked. I carried something important. Too important to let it fall into the wrong hands. I fled in the pod. But I did not think I would survive." Marcus leaned forward. "Attacked? By who?" Lysera's expression darkened. "By those who fear peace, my people. They seek to end the coming war. But there are others who want to ignite it." Marcus rubbed his chin. He wasn't much for politics, but he understood enough to realize she was on a dangerous mission. And now, by pulling her aboard, he was part of it. Lysera studied him again, tilting her head. "You risked yourself to save me. Why?" Marcus shrugged, though his voice carried quiet conviction. "Because leaving someone to die out here isn't right. Doesn't matter what species you are." For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. "Humans are strange. My people would call it foolishness, but I am grateful." Silence filled the medbay for a while. The steady hum of the ship, the faint glow from Lysera's skin, and the endless stars outside gave the moment an almost dreamlike quality. Marcus realized just how rare this encounter was. He had grown up hearing stories of alien species, but never once had he expected to share a conversation, let alone save one. Eventually, Lysera sat up slowly. "I must reach my people. What I carry must not be lost. Will you help me?" Marcus hesitated. He knew this could drag him into trouble far bigger than cargo runs and trade stops. But looking at her, fragile yet determined, he couldn't find it in himself to refuse. "All right," he said firmly. "Tell me where you need to go. I'll get you there." Lysra bowed her head in thanks. "Then perhaps fate brought me to the wrong place. Only to meet the right person." Marcus chuckled softly at that. Wrong place or not, it was clear his quiet cargo run had just turned into something far greater. Outside, the stars continued to burn, silent witnesses to the beginning of a journey neither human nor Alain could have predicted. Marcus Hale had carried many passengers in his life, traders, soldiers, even a few shady smugglers, but none compared to Lysra of the Alain. She sat quietly in the co-pilot's chair of the Wayfarer Dawn, her crystal-like skin reflecting the faint glow of the control panels. Every time Marcus glanced at her, he was reminded that this was no ordinary cargo run. This was history in the making. For a while, silence filled the cockpit. Marcus was used to silence. It was a constant companion of space travel. But this silence felt heavier, filled with questions that neither of them knew how to ask. Finally, Lysra spoke. "You are certain," she said softly, "that you wish to help me?" Marcus adjusted the ship's heading and gave her a sideways look. "I already pulled you out of that pod. Wouldn't make much sense to stop now, would it?" Her eyes flickered with a faint glow. "You risk more than you realize. If they find us, those who attacked my vessel, you will become their target too." "Story of my life," Marcus muttered, half to himself. "Look, Lysra, I'm not the type to leave someone stranded. You said you have something important to deliver. Tell me what it is and maybe I'll understand what I signed up for." Lysra hesitated. She turned slightly in her chair, her gaze drifting toward the endless stars outside the viewport. "The Alain are keepers of memory," she began. "Our minds hold patterns of light, threads of history, fragments of knowledge. What I carry is not a weapon, not gold, not power in the way most species think of it. I carry a path." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "A path?" "Yes," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "The coordinates of safe passages through the Rift Nebula, a shortcut across the galaxy that avoids the war zones. If shared with the right people, it could open trade, unite colonies, and prevent conflict. But if the wrong hand seize it, they will use it to move fleets unseen, to strike before anyone can prepare." Marcus whistled low. "So you've got the galactic equivalent of a backdoor key and everybody wants it." Lysra nodded gravely. "My attackers were no pirates. They served an empire that thrives on conquest. They cannot be allowed to reach my homeworld with what they believe I carry." Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "And here I thought this trip was going to be boring." For the first time since they met, Lysra's lips curved into a faint smile. It was a small thing, but it carried warmth. "Perhaps fate has a sense of humor," she said. They traveled in silence for a time. The hum of the ship's engines filled the space between them. Marcus glanced at the navigational map and frowned. The straight course to the Alain system passed dangerously close to the border of the Vorath Empire, the likely attackers. "You weren't kidding," he muttered, pointing to the glowing red markers. "If we go straight, we're running right into them." Lysra studied the map. "Then we must take another path." "That'll add at least 2 weeks," Marcus said. She turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. "Is your time worth more than your life?" Marcus chuckled. "Fair point." He entered the new course, adjusting for detours around dangerous sectors. "All right, Lysra. 2 weeks it is. You better have some good stories to tell, or I'm going to go crazy with just the stars for company." Her expression softened. "Perhaps I do. Would you like to hear one?" "Hit me," Marcus said, leaning back. Lysra's voice grew gentle, almost musical as she spoke. "My people do not build monuments of stone or metal. We carry our history within us. Each Alain child is taught to weave memory into light, to shape the echoes of our ancestors. When one of us dies, their memories scatter into the stars, leaving trails of brilliance. That is why we shine, Marcus. We are not only ourselves, we are everyone who came before." Marcus listened quietly. The idea was strange but beautiful. "So you're like living libraries?" Lysra tilted her head. "Yes, but unlike libraries, we cannot be burned or destroyed. As long as one of us lives, our people remember. That's actually pretty amazing," Marcus admitted. He scratched his chin. "Humans write things down, store them in books, computers, recordings. But we forget. Sometimes on purpose, Lysera studied him closely. "And yet you chose to remember me when it would have been easier to let me drift." Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable under her gaze. "Guess I'm stubborn like that." Their conversation was interrupted. The Wayfarer Dawn glided through the void, its old engines humming a steady rhythm. For 2 weeks, Marcus Hale and Lysera had traveled together, moving from quiet star lanes to hidden routes that avoided the attention of patrols. Marcus had learned to understand her silences, her small gestures, and the strange glow of her skin that pulsed like living starlight. Though the danger of the Vorath Empire lingered, the long hours of travel gave them moments of peace. Marcus found himself talking more than usual, about his childhood on a dusty colony, about the first ship he ever flew, about the time he barely survived a storm on a gas giant. Lysera listened with a quiet curiosity, sometimes asking simple questions that made him realize how strange and bold humans must seem to her people. But the peace did not last. One evening, as Marcus scanned the navigation charts, his eyes lit up. "Finally," he said. "There's a station just a few jumps from here. Not one of the big ones, but it's neutral territory. We can fuel up, grab supplies, maybe even get you better medical care." Lysera tilted her head, the faint glow in her eyes narrowing. "Are you certain it is safe?" Marcus gave a confident nod. "I've been there before. Traders use it all the time. No Vorath flags, no military presence, just an old outpost on the edge of nowhere." Lysera hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "If you trust it, I will trust you." Those words stuck with Marcus more than he expected. "I will trust you." It was a weight on his shoulders, heavier than any cargo he had carried. But he pushed the thought aside as the Wayfarer Dawn descended toward the station. The station loomed ahead, an aging ring of steel and lights drifting against the stars. Its docking beacons blinked lazily, guiding Marcus in. The ship touched down with a thud, and the docking clamps secured them. Marcus stood stretching. "All right, let's get some supplies, and maybe something that doesn't taste like recycled air." Lysera followed him cautiously down the ramp. Her crystalline skin caught the station's dim light, drawing curious stares from passing workers and traders. Marcus noticed and stepped a little closer, shielding her as best he could. "Don't mind them," he whispered. "Most of these folks have never seen an Alain before." At first, everything seemed normal. Stalls sold spare parts, food packs, and trinkets from distant systems. The smell of engine grease and burnt metal hung in the air. Marcus bartered for fuel and supplies, while Lysera wandered a short distance away, her eyes wide as she studied the strange mix of humans and aliens. But then Marcus noticed something. A group of men in dark uniforms stood at the far end of the market. They weren't browsing or trading. They were watching. Watching Lysera, his stomach dropped. He recognized the insignia on their shoulders, subtle but unmistakable. "Vorath. Lysera," Marcus said quickly, moving to her side. "We need to go now." But it was already too late. The men moved in fast, weapons drawn. One shouted in a harsh voice, "By order of the Vorath Empire, the Alain girl is under arrest." The market erupted in chaos. Traders scattered, stalls crashed over, shouts echoed through the air. Lysera tried to step back, but 2 soldiers grabbed her arms. She struggled, her glow flaring brightly, but the Vorath pressed a metal collar around her neck. The light dimmed instantly, her strength collapsing. "Marcus!" she cried, reaching out. Marcus lunged forward, but the butt of a rifle slammed into his chest, knocking the air from his lungs. He fell hard against the metal floor, pain exploding through his ribs. The soldiers dragged Lysera away, her voice echoing through the market. "Marcus, do not—" Her words were cut off as the Vorath shoved her into a transport shuttle. Marcus staggered to his feet, rage burning through him. He had promised her safety. He had told her this place was safe, and now, because of his mistake, she was gone. He pressed a hand to his side, forcing himself to breathe. The station's ordinary workers looked away, pretending not to see. No one wanted to challenge the Vorath. No one wanted to risk their own life. Marcus clenched his fists. "No," he growled under his breath. "Not like this." He stumbled back toward the Wayfarer Dawn, his mind racing. The Vorath had her. They had Lysera, and worse, they probably knew she carried something important. If they broke her, if they forced the secret from her, everything she had fought for would be lost. Inside the cockpit, Marcus slammed into his chair and powered up the ship. The station's traffic control barked over the comms. "Unauthorized departure detected." Stand down, ship Wayfarer Dawn. Stuff it, Marcus muttered, cutting the channel. He lifted off, engines roaring. The Vorath transport was already pulling away from the station, escort ships forming around it. Marcus's hands flew across the controls. His ship wasn't built for combat. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't armed like a warship. But Marcus Hale wasn't about to let that stop him. He had something the Vorath didn't. He had desperation, and he had a reason to fight. The chase began. The Wayfarer Dawn surged after the Vorath shuttle, weaving between the station's docking arms. Alarms blared across the comms as Vorath fighters locked onto him. Bolts of plasma lit the void, streaking past his hull. Marcus gritted his teeth, yanking the controls. The freighter groaned in protest, but it held together. Through the viewport, Marcus saw Lysera's face for just a moment, pressed against the shuttle window. Her eyes met his. Even from that distance, he could see the faint flicker of hope return. "I'll get you back," Marcus whispered, as if she could hear him across the vacuum of space. The Vorath fighters closed in, weapons ready. Marcus pushed his ship harder, his mind racing for a plan. He had made a mistake bringing her here. He had put her in the wrong place. But now he was going to make it right, no matter the cost. The Wayfarer Dawn rattled as another plasma bolt grazed its hull. Sparks flew across the cockpit and warning lights flashed red. Marcus Hale tightened his grip on the controls, his teeth clenched. The Vorath fighters were faster, stronger, and better armed. Against them, his freighter was little more than a cargo crate with engines. But Marcus wasn't ready to give up. Not now. Not when Lysera's life was in their hands. He glanced at the scanner. The Vorath shuttle carrying her was locked in formation with 2 escorts. If they reached open space and called for reinforcements, he would lose her forever. "Think, Marcus," he muttered. "You can't outgun them. So outsmart them." His eyes flicked across the controls, searching for options. The Wayfarer Dawn was an old ship, patched together from decades of repairs. But that was also her secret weapon. The Vorath flew sleek, efficient war machines. Marcus's ship was messy, unpredictable, and full of quirks that only he knew. He cut the main thrusters suddenly, letting the ship drop behind a cluster of drifting wreckage. The Vorath overshot, spinning around in confusion. Marcus powered down almost everything, making the ship look like another piece of debris. The Vorath scout circled, scanning for him. Marcus held his breath, watching the blinking lights on the scanner. The enemy passed close, too close. His hands itched to fire the engines, but he waited until the Vorath turned their attention back to the shuttle's course. Then he struck. Marcus slammed the throttle forward, engines roaring back to life. The Wayfarer Dawn shot out from behind the wreckage, racing toward the shuttle. Alarm screamed as the Vorath fighters swung around, but Marcus had already closed the distance. He opened a comm channel, broadcasting on wide-band frequencies. "Hey, Vorath tinheads, you forgot something, me." His voice was mocking, taunting. "Catch me if you can." The fighters peeled away from the shuttle to chase him. Just as he hoped, now it was a race. Plasma fire streaked across the black, lighting the void. Marcus twisted and rolled the freighter through sharp turns, cutting between asteroids and debris. The fighters followed, but their sleek designs weren't built for such reckless maneuvers. One clipped a rock and exploded in a flash of fire. Marcus grinned tightly. One down. The second fighter stayed on him, stubborn and relentless. Marcus pushed the Wayfarer Dawn into a narrow gap between 2 tumbling asteroids. Metal scraped the hull, alarms screamed, but the old ship squeezed through. The Vorath fighter tried to follow, and smashed against the rock, bursting apart in a silent bloom of fire. Marcus let out a long breath. 2 down. But the hardest part remained. The shuttle still carried Lysera. He angled the Wayfarer Dawn back toward the Vorath transport. It was larger than the fighters, armored and reinforced. He couldn't blow it apart, and he couldn't board it with weapons. He needed a trick. His eyes landed on the ship's cargo bay systems. A dangerous idea formed. He opened the comm to the shuttle. "This is Captain Marcus Hale. You're holding someone who doesn't belong to you. Hand her over or I'll—" He paused, smirking. "I'll dump 10 tons of raw reactor waste right on your engines." The Vorath commander's voice came back, cold and amused. "You are bluffing, human. Your ship is weak. You cannot harm us." Marcus flipped the cargo bay release. A massive container, filled not with reactor waste but with scrap metal, launched into space. He fired the maneuvering thrusters, sending it tumbling directly toward the shuttle. The Vorath cursed over the comms. Evasive maneuvers. The shuttle swerved, narrowly missing the spinning container. Marcus used the moment of chaos to dive in close. He brought the Wayfarer Dawn right alongside the shuttle, so close their hulls nearly scraped. "Lysera, if you can hear me, hold on," Marcus whispered. He activated the ship's magnetic grapplers latching onto the shuttle's side. Sparks flew as the two ships locked together. Alarms blared on both vessels. The Vorath tried to shake him off, but Marcus rerouted power to the grapplers clinging tight. Then he did something reckless. He vented the Wayfarer Dawn's cargo bay atmosphere directly into space. The sudden force jolted both ships, spinning them slightly. The shuttle's systems overloaded, shields flickering. Marcus seized the chance. He fired the docking clamps, tearing open a hatch between the ships. Without hesitation, he grabbed his old pulse pistol, strapped on a breathing mask, and leapt through. The corridor on the shuttle was dim and sterile, filled with the hum of machines. Vorath soldiers rushed to meet him, weapons raised. Marcus ducked behind a bulkhead, returning fire. His shots weren't perfect, but he didn't need to win a firefight. He just needed to cause chaos. He pulled a small device from his belt, a signal scrambler he had bought years ago from a black market dealer. It was ancient human tech, something most modern scanners ignored. He tossed it down the hall, and instantly the shuttle's lights flickered, alarms warping into static. The Vorath shouted in confusion, their comms jammed. Marcus pushed forward, firing and moving. He wasn't a soldier, but he was fast, stubborn, and desperate. That was enough. At the far end of the hall, he saw her, Lysera, locked in a containment cell, the collar still around her neck. Her eyes widened as she saw him. "Marcus, hang tight," he shouted, blasting the control panel. The door slid open and he rushed to her side. The collar glowed faintly, draining her strength. He cursed under his breath, then pulled a multi-tool from his belt. Sparks flew as he jammed it into the lock, prying and cutting until the device finally snapped apart. The collar fell to the floor. Instantly, Lysera's glow brightened, her strength returning. She staggered but caught herself, her crystal-like skin shimmering with renewed light. "You came," she whispered, her voice filled with both wonder and relief. "Of course I came," Marcus said, pulling her to her feet. "Now let's get out of here." The Vorath soldiers regrouped, charging down the hall. Lysera raised her hands, light flaring from her skin. Energy rippled outward, dazzling the attackers. They stumbled, blinded. Marcus fired a few more shots, forcing them back. Together they raced through the corridor back toward the breach between the ships. The Wayfarer Dawn loomed beyond, its familiar bulk a promise of safety. Marcus shoved Lysera through the hatch first, then followed, slamming the emergency seal behind him. He released the grapplers, and the freighter lurched free from the shuttle. The Vorath transport spun wildly, its systems still scrambled. The Wayfarer Dawn surged away, engines burning bright. In the cockpit, Marcus collapsed into his chair, panting. Lysera stood beside him, her glow steady, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved me," she said softly. "You risked everything." Marcus gave her a tired grin. "Told you. Stubborn." For a moment, silence filled the ship, broken only by the hum of the engines. Then Lysera placed a hand lightly on his arm. "Perhaps it is not stubbornness. Perhaps it is what makes humans different. You fight not because you must, but because you choose to." Marcus glanced at her, surprised by the warmth in her voice. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. The Vorath shuttle drifted far behind them, fading into the distance. They had escaped, but Marcus knew the journey wasn't over. The hardest part was still ahead, reaching Lysera's homeworld and delivering the secret she carried. For now, though, he allowed himself a moment of relief. He had made a mistake before, putting her in the wrong place, but this time he had made it right. Marcus sat in the pilot's chair of his freighter, the Orion's Hope, staring at the bright blue star that glowed ahead. Lysera's homeworld was near, hidden behind a cluster of icy rings and glittering moons. After so many days of danger, fear, and narrow escapes, the journey was almost at its end. He should have felt only relief. But instead, Marcus felt a heavy weight pressing on his chest. His mistake had almost cost Lysera everything. If he had not put her in the wrong place, the enemy outpost, none of the risks and close calls would have happened. Lysera stepped into the cockpit, her crystalline skin catching the soft light of the console. She could see the worry in his eyes. "You are thinking too much again," she said softly. Her voice carried the calm musical tone of her people. Marcus forced a smile. Just making sure I don't mess this up too. She shook her head. You saved me. That is the truth that matters. The words gave him some comfort, but he still knew the hardest part was yet to come. Reaching the Alain homeworld meant facing their council. They were powerful, cautious, and proud. He was just a human, a simple freighter pilot. Would they even listen to him? Arrival at the Alain world, the planet of the Alain, came into view. It shimmered with silver seas and great crystalline forests that sparkled like towers of glass. Orbital platforms circled the world, each one glowing with energy shields. Ships patrolled in neat formations, their sleek designs unlike anything Marcus had seen before. A transmission crackled across his console. The voice was firm, commanding. Unidentified human vessel, you are entering restricted space. State your purpose. Marcus glanced at Lysera. She stepped forward, pressing her hand against the communicator. This is Lysera of the Alain people. I am returning with urgent data. The human with me is my rescuer. He must be allowed safe passage. There was a long silence. Then the voice returned, more formal this time. Proceed to docking bay 4. The council awaits. Marcus let out the breath he had been holding. His hands gripped the controls tightly as the freighter descended through the shining atmosphere. The Grand Council. The docking bay was vast, filled with glowing structures that seemed to hum with life. When Marcus and Lysera stepped out, they were met by guards in crystalline armor. Their eyes scanned Marcus carefully, but they made no move to harm him. He followed Lysera through bright corridors until they reached a great chamber. The walls were alive with light, as though the crystals themselves pulsed with energy. At the center sat the Alain Council, a circle of elder beings, their bodies shining like polished jewels. Lysera stepped forward and bowed. Marcus copied her, feeling out of place. One of the elders spoke, his voice deep and echoing. Lysera, child of our people, you have returned. We feared you lost. Lysera raised her head. I was nearly lost. But this human saved me. He carried me across enemy lines. He fought to protect me, even when the odds were against him. The elders turned their shining eyes toward Marcus. He felt very small under their gaze. Another elder spoke, her tone sharp. And yet it was by his mistake that you were delivered into enemy hands. Why should we trust one who nearly cost us our future? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. He wanted to defend himself, but words failed. Lysera stepped closer to him, her voice strong. He is not perfect, but he did not abandon me. He risked everything for someone not of his kind. That is a strength few would show. That is what makes him worthy. The enemy threat before the council could reply, an alarm echoed through the chamber. A young Alain officer rushed in. Council! Enemy ships are approaching our borders. They have detected the stolen data's absence. They are preparing for war. The chamber filled with tense voices. Marcus's heart pounded. After all this, the threat was still real. The elder who had first spoken turned to Marcus. You are human. You know little of our ways, yet you have seen the enemy up close. What would you do now? Marcus blinked. The question stunned him. He was just a pilot, not a soldier, not a strategist. But then he remembered every choice he had made since meeting Lysera. He had survived not because he had better weapons, but because he thought differently. I'd do what humans always do. Marcus said slowly. I'd use what I have, not what I wish I had. I'd fight smart, not strong. And I'd stand by my allies no matter the cost. The council chamber went silent. Then one elder leaned forward, eyes glowing brighter. Perhaps the human way has value. Marcus's plan against all tradition, the council allowed Marcus to speak his plan. He explained how human ships, though weaker, often relied on tricks and misdirection. He suggested using decoys, false transmissions, and hidden routes through the icy rings near the planet. Lysera added her knowledge of the enemy's patterns, and together they crafted a daring defense. The elders were cautious, but in the end they agreed. Very well, the head elder said. We will trust the human. The final stand enemy ships arrived in full force, sleek war cruisers armed with devastating weapons. The Alain fleet rose to meet them, guided by Marcus's plan. From the Orion's Hope, Marcus watched as false signals confused the enemy. Decoy ships drew them into traps hidden in the icy rings. Ambushes struck from unexpected angles. For every powerful strike the enemy tried, the Alain responded with clever human-inspired maneuvers. The battle raged across the skies, bright with fire and crystal light. Finally, the enemy realized they had been tricked. Their fleet, scattered and damaged, retreated into the void. Cheers filled the Alain world. The council declared victory. not just for their people but for the strange partnership between human and Alain. A new beginning. After the battle, Marcus stood beside Lysera before the council once more. The elders looked at him with respect this time, not suspicion. "You came to us as a mistake," the head elder said, "but you leave as a lesson. Humans may lack power, but they possess something greater, the will to risk everything for others. That spirit has saved us today." Lysera smiled at Marcus. "You are more than a rescuer, Marcus. You are a friend of the Alain." Marcus felt warmth rise in his chest. He had never sought glory or honor, but here he was, a freighter pilot who had changed the fate of a world. As he prepared to leave, Lysera placed a hand on his shoulder. "Wherever you go, remember, you are not alone. The Alain will remember the human who stood by us." Marcus nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "And I'll remember the girl who taught me that even in the darkest places, light can still shine." With that, Marcus boarded the Orion's Hope. The stars stretched before him, endless and waiting. He had no idea where his journey would take him next, but he knew one thing for certain: humans truly had a place among the stars.